Here's how we take the story forward. Basic Education Minister Angie Motshekga intervening in this very, very disturbing KZN food nutrition program for schools that tens of thousands of school pupils rely on what is often their only meal a day that they receive at school, demanding, she says, all documents to see if the tender was above board. But here's the issue. While tenders are being looked at and we have ministers looking at the issue, still too many people are going hungry every single day. Let's get reaction from the IFP President. It's President Velenkosini Hlabisa making time for us this morning. President Hlabisa, good morning to you. I appreciate your time, and I'm seeing various reports online that the IFP and other political parties going out and trying to help at these schools. I imagine then, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I imagine you think this is a complete disaster and now you're having to jump in to try help. What do you make of the situation?
Good morning, my brother, as well as the viewers of ENCA. Of course, this is for the first time in the history of the nutrition program in our schools since it was introduced during the dispensation of freedom in our country. As you rightly know, the majority of learners in schools that qualify for nutrition program come from poor families, and the majority of them leave their homes with nothing in their stomach and only get a meaningful learning once they have received their meals. It's a disaster and a crisis which need a swift action, both from the Minister National, the Premier of KwaZulu-Natal, and the MEC for Education in KwaZulu-Natal. The little that we are doing to intervene is not enough, as we have so many schools, because what is obtainable on the ground, whatever that arrives as food for learners, is either incomplete, rotten vegetables, or not in compliance with what should be eaten by learners on Monday, Tuesday, because there is a specific timetable or program, the menu for each day. So far, it's not happening, and whatever arrives is not enough, and some schools have not received anything at all, or some, if they do, they will just receive a packet of oranges or a box of apples or just mass only, which they cannot use. So now this is a crisis. We believe, as the IFP, the Department of Education must make a swift decision to cancel this service provider immediately so that the situation can be brought back to the normal and reappoint those people who were providing services prior the assumption of this one sole provider who has no capacity at all.
Well, this is what I wanted to ask you, President Hlabisa, as well, is how, to your understanding, did this end up with a massive contract and tender like this to feed tens of thousands of school pupils, thousands of schools? What is your understanding how this fell on one provider? I want to remind viewers of the name, and I hope I got the pronunciation right, Pekina Retail. How does one retailer get the contract for this? It sounds very bizarre to me. Do you agree?
I completely agree with you. This is a disaster, and no doubt there will be an element of corruption here, because what we understand from the service providers is that the tender was manipulated along the way. It is not what was contained in the tender, the way it is operating, and some service providers say when they raised an objection that, but this is not what was tendered for, the response was either take it or leave it. You know, when you deal with people whom you know, we're talking of small, medium-sized companies emerging companies here who are struggling. And when you say take it or leave it, someone who is desperate will take whatever because he hopes that he might put food on the table. But unfortunately, this is not going to work because even the money the service provider who take food to school they are going to receive has been reduced drastically. They will only receive 30% and 70% of each allocation for a school will go to this sole service provider. And if we look at the company, as you rightly pronounced it, the company does not have capacity to deal with a project of 2.1 billion, because if you look at the SARS return of the company has been only paying 100 rand, which clearly means it's a company that has not been making any profit, or simply is a front company. There is a company behind or big people behind this company, which definitely is an element of corruption, because why do you use a company with no capacity if there is someone or a big company behind? But above all, for this process to work, you need a period of not less than 2 years to 5 years, and you need to pilot first if you want to buy in bulk and distribute from the bulk point of view. So now this was a hasty decision. Of course, one might be tempted to think that there are elections next year. People are trying to mobilize money in any way. I'm not saying it is so, but one is tempted to think so, that because corruption has destroyed South Africa. We are where we are as a country, unemployment, load shedding, crime that is beyond control points. It is because the resources of our country were misdirected, manipulated, and used for wrong ends, and we remain as a country idling.
And Angie Motshekga agrees with us, which is why she seems to be intervening so very quickly, President Hlabisa. Let me ask you this, just very briefly, if you don't mind. What do you think needs to happen now? Not about fixing the situation, to fight the alleged corruption in this. Who needs to get fired? Does somebody need to lose their jobs over this? Very briefly, before I say goodbye, President Hlabisa.
Firstly, terminate the sole service provider, reappoint previous providers. The Premier or the Minister must institute an investigation so that you do not only deal with others and leave others. A very precise investigation. On the outcome of the investigation, all those who are implicated must be shown the door.